refugees to make informed decisions about their health, nutrition, education, protection, and livelihoods. In Kenya, we work in Kakuma and Kalobeye refugee complexes, which are located in Turkana County in the northwestern part of the country. And we also operate in the Dadaab refugee complex in Garissa County. So let's education, protection, and livelihoods. In Kenya, we work in Kakuma and Kalobeye refugee complexes, which are located. Let's jump right in to today's panel now. And before I introduce our panelists, a few housekeeping announcements. This session will run for 2 hours. The panelists will spend the first hour and a half sharing their insights. And then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A session. To make the session engaging, we'll ask the panelists to spend about 5 minutes each as an icebreaker, sharing their preliminary thoughts on their areas of expertise. Following this, we'll go for a second round of presentations, where our panelists will respond to their colleagues' presentations and share additional insights. I encourage all our attendees that are listening and viewing us this morning to note their questions down on the YouTube Live and Facebook Live chat boxes as we go along, so we can take as many questions as possible during the 30 minutes Q&A session. Please don't forget to include your name, your location, and the organization that you're affiliated with as you make your comments, provide your feedback, and ask your questions. I'd also like our viewers to tweet as much as they can during today and the rest of the week. Please use the hashtag FAFF2020. And I repeat, hashtag FAF2020. So in today's webinar, our diverse group of panelists will share their insights into the role of film, arts, and media in a rapidly changing environment. In speaker order now, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Eugene Byun is UNHCR Kenya's spokesperson. She is originally from South Korea and has worked in UNHCR in Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Egypt, Iraq, and South Sudan. Today, Eugene will present on Kenya's humanitarian situation and the refugee response in 2020. Our second panelist is Nihal Deng, who is a young filmmaker and youth advocate. Nihal was born in Western Ethiopia and has called Kakuma home since 2010. He's a graduate of FilmAid's media training program, and today he'll be sharing his insights on the challenges and opportunities facing refugee filmmakers in 2020. After Nihal, we'll have Timothy Owase, who is the CEO of the Kenya Film Commission. He has a background in marketing, communications, film, and film. His presentation will focus on the role of film in society. Our fourth panelist is Sarah Malia, who's a co-founder and producer at Freehand Studios, which is a social impact illustration and animation company. She's an impact producer with a background in migration, arts, and media, and she has experience of working in Kenya, Libya, and her home country, Malta. She's currently based in Nairobi, and her presentation will focus on the role of arts and social change in a post-COVID world. Our final panelist is Michael Moi. Michael is a journalist, graphic designer, communicator, and entrepreneur with over 18 years of experience in Kenya's mainstream media. Michael will focus his presentation on the role of media in a rapidly changing environment. Eugene, I think we'd like to dive right in now, and I'll begin by asking you to paint us a picture of the humanitarian situation in Kenya today, and tell us why 2020 has been challenging, particularly for refugee hosting countries such as Kenya. Over to you, Eugene.
Thank you so much. It's just such an honor to be participating in this panel discussion with the various experts from this area. I will just, as Nicoletta said, I will only represent like how the humanitarian world changed in 2020. As you all know, that the 2020 represent like keyword of 2020 must be COVID-19. And then the world facing the one of the biggest health challenge. And it is one of the biggest health challenge, but also a massive humanitarian challenge for which we have never witnessed it before. Of course, we faced a lot of a health challenge, including Ebola and and other health disease. And in this circumstance, that we have to also understand that there is a lot of challenge in refugee camp itself. That COVID-19 it require a lot of restriction and then a protocol, including physical distancing, which in refugee camp, which is nearly impossible. But also that at the same time that all the humanitarian worker and then including UNHCR, we adopt the situation, because we know that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So we continue to advocate, and then we work together with the government of Kenya, who is leading the COVID-19 response, and we are so grateful for the government of Kenya to include the refugee in the response and the national response plan. So we work together with the partner and then the government of Kenya, but most importantly with the refugees. Because what I witnessed working as a humanitarian worker is whenever there is a crisis, the resilience of a refugee is amazing. And then they always step in and then support each other and support also host community. So we, in this challenging time, we witnessed that how refugees step in and then support each other. You will hear from Niall just right after me. Niall is the amazing example that he gathered the refugee youth and then used his talent that learned from FilmAid and then what he has as a talent, so that he disseminated information about COVID-19 for those neighbors who might not have those information, who might not know the impact of COVID-19. We also witnessed a lot of refugee health workers who step in to respond to COVID-19. We have a refugee who made a soap, who also make a lot of the mask. So we have witnessed a lot of those the initiative led by refugee, and then we're also witnessed that host community also come to support refugees. So of course, this is a very challenging time that we also have to work together. And we know that this kind of a global challenge must be addressed through the solidarity and cooperation, which that we all witness at the moment. So it is indeed a challenging time, but also that I think with the solidarity that we can overcome, and then we'll work together. So in this point that I know that UNHCR and other humanitarian organizations on the ground, together with the refugee community, that we will continue to stay and deliver, and then we'll also appreciate the talent that the refugees are using through art and media to give information. We know that communication and information is so important in this difficult time. So we appreciate the refugee talent who are using their talent through art and media to give information to those vulnerable community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eugene, for providing us that context and setting the tone to today's panel. Nihal, I think I'd like you to build up on what Eugene has shared. You have lived in Kakuma since 2010. My first question to you is, what have you observed about 2020 that is so striking, particularly for filmmakers like yourself?
Thank you so much, Nikirote. I'm so glad to be part of this and to bring my voice to this conversation, which I think is really crucial, that refugees' voices are presented in conversation like this, in conversation about issues that affect them. So my name is Niall Deng, and I've spent the last 10 years of my life in Kakuma refugee camp, where I currently live. And 2020 has been very different for me in so many ways, as Eugene said before, not just for me, but for so many refugees. And I think as a refugee, you often go through a lot of challenges, and 2020 came with its own set of challenges, which became another top of burden on what we have been challenging, on the challenges we have been facing before. And coming, to me as a filmmaker, it has been very challenging, with the restriction on the number of people that can come together, and also restriction on even schooling. I remember our classes were interrupted not just one time, but we set up classes for months, and it wasn't easy to study online because there is no stable internet connection in the camp, and that was one challenge. And also even the restriction on movements then mean it can be arts for a filmmaker who maybe have a project out of the camp to go and do that. And also for filmmakers who want even to do a film in the camp, it became very hard even when it came to try to use media to disseminate accurate information. It was really hard because we cannot bring a big number of people together, and also we have to provide we have to comply with the health requirement, which was even very hard because there's not even enough access to water, which while it is required that you wash your hands every few moments. So those were like a number of challenges that make it very hard for filmmakers, refugee filmmakers, basically, who have been going through a lot before and now have another set of challenges to face. So those are just a few challenges that we have been facing. But I think on the other hand, it also been an opportunity, for the world to come to understand that what we need the most is solidarity. COVID-19 has taught us that, as Eugene said, that none of us is safe until all of us are safe. And I think these are moments whereby it is very crucial that refugee voices are present, and also refugees are seen as creators, as we have seen with filmmakers stepping up and providing accurate information to their communities about the current crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Nihal. Obviously, the world has had to adapt this year quite rapidly because of the pandemic. But I agree with you that I think with certain communities, including the refugee communities, I think you've had to, the struggle to adapt to all these changes has been even greater. But before I hand over to Timothy, Nihal, I think I'd like to ask you a second question. And this one is more of a personal one because you're the only panelist with a refugee background on this session. Maybe just tell us about yourself and tell us about how your journey as a filmmaker began and what inspired it.
Thank you so much for that. I was born in Western Ethiopia. My father originally came from South Sudan, and he moved to Ethiopia more than 50 years ago during the Sudan Civil War. I'm a Nuer, and my tribe lives between the border of South Sudan and Ethiopia. Majority of us are in South Sudan, but there are a few of us who are in Ethiopia and who have lived in Gambela for decades. And that is where I was born, and that is where I grew up. And my father sought Ethiopian citizenship after living in Ethiopia for 20 years. So when I was growing up back in the village, my dad believed in the power of education, and he also believed in the power of information. He owned a small radio, which was the only radio in the village, and was my alarm, which wakes me up every morning to go to school. And what was really striking is that when I came back to the evening, I will, find people coming home asking my dad, what is happening back home in South Sudan. And I was really inspired by how one voice can give, voice to 700 people, and how access to information is power. So through the radio, I when I grew up, I wanted to be a journalist, to try to shed some light, to places that are in the dark, like my village. So that is what inspired me to be a journalist. So when I came to Kenya, I see an opportunity through a film and media training program. But also, even before I joined film and media training program, I helped set up a journalism club at my school, which is very active at my former high school. And it would, collect information in the camp over the weekend. And every morning on Monday, we would present news, about what is happening in the camp and what is happening outside the world. And I find it very, very powerful that, millions of people can depend on you for information, which could even help them in so many ways. So that's how my journey into film has been and into journalism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nihal. That's a very inspiring story. And Timothy, I'll hand over to you now. We've heard about Nihal's journey. We've heard about his personal journey and his journey as a filmmaker. As the CEO of the Kenya Film Commission, what advice would you give a young filmmaker like himself? And I'm sure we also have other aspiring filmmakers that are listening in today that are from different parts of Kenya. What advice would you give such young filmmakers in addressing the challenges and leveraging some of the opportunities that Nihal has outlined?
Thank you very much. And I wish to take this opportunity to thank FilmAid for creating this platform for us to have a conversation about film and the role in the. First, allow me to also put forth that the Commission's role as a government institution is to support the film industry, to look at the operating environment, to look at how we can be able to fund filmmakers to tell stories, because we appreciate the role film plays in our society. A vibrant film industry will give a jurisdiction or a country many benefits, starting from branding a nation, creating employment, providing room for psychosocial benefits like now during this COVID-19, many people find solace on screen industries, education and edutainment, also technology transfer and skills transfer emanating from the industry. Looking at all these benefits, the government found it fit to have Kenya Film Commission in place so that we are able to grow the capacity in terms of skills, infrastructure that will be able to promote production, and also storytelling based from the very basic stories that we all undergo when we are young children. And today the same stories can be put on PlayStation as part of gaming. So for the young people today, and I not only want to address the young people, but I would like to address everyone, because the opportunities in the filming industry looks at the entire value chain. Remember, there is the writer of a story, there is the producer, there is the director and all those, there is a distributor and there is the audience. So we cannot separate and only address one niche. The youths are being given more prominence because this is the target where we are convinced that the future of the creative sector is in the hands of the youth. They are technological savvy, they are willing to be very creative, and so on. So listening to Nihal, I must say that as a government, we have a role to ensure that we nurture talent, and nurturing talent is ensuring we bring close to the people facilities for capacity building, enabling programs like what the Commission has introduced, the empowerment program, where we are able to support film productions, content acquisitions, because when Nihil comes up with the content, he would like that content to be consumed. And the only way it can be consumed is if at all he has the skills for entrepreneurship, and whether there is a distribution channel where he can be able to exhibit his content. The Commission is currently partnering with various platforms. Of course, when we talk about various platforms and looking at the theme of this conversation, it's all about changing environment. Unlike before, when content would only be consumed through cinema theaters, today, content is largely consumed on your mobile handset. So again, Nihil has to be in a position, and I'm referring to him because he's a representative of many young people who are sitting or who are in that particular space. He has to know how to monetize his content so that it's not just about entertaining. You must be able to entertain, but at the same time, create wealth out of your works. Knowledge about copyright, intellectual property is critical. One needs to also understand his the audience, because you can't be able to come up with a product if you do not know whom you are targeting to reach. Because when you know and you produce high quality content, then chances are that your audiences will be willing to spend money to produce. All this said and done, allow me to highlight key areas that will enable a thriving filming jurisdiction. One, legal reforms that will enable film incentives to be in place so that, you know, we do appreciate that production of a film is not a walk in the park. It requires a lot of work, it requires a lot of money, it requires a lot of skill, and government has to put in place measures that will be able to cushion the filmmaker in order to achieve that kind of element. And that's why the commission was established by the Kenya government to facilitate that. Of course, having put the commission in place, our intention is that jobs will be created from the productions the youngsters like Nihil will be able to put forth. And that's why the business acumen or mind of the filmmakers has also to play a part. The commission is undertaking various of these programs in order for the young filmmakers to be self-aware. Be aware about your environment, be aware about your target market, be aware about whom you want to sell your content to, the audiences, be aware about the regulatory framework, among others. During COVID, that is an environment that has been very special to many people, because without any notice, the country had to really close down in terms of economic activities. What did that mean to filmmakers? Remember, most filmmakers are not permanently employed by their employers. They are only given contracts. And from our survey, we found that majority of these filmmakers lost their jobs instantly, just from the announcement. The reason being, key projects were either suspended or cancelled completely. And when this happened, the many young people who are connected to these projects lost their jobs or their livelihoods instantly. And that's why, as a country, through the Commission, we had to be prepared and introduce programs that will be able to cushion filmmakers. For this reason, we were able to put in place two key programs. The empowerment program, which is to support filmmakers.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to wrap up now, because we have an opportunity to get into more in-depth sharing in the second round of questions. And I think some of my questions that I'm going to ask in the second round touch on some of the things that you're already highlighting. Thank you so much for those.
Okay.
I think we will just move right into our next panelist, Sarah. And Sarah, I think I'd like you to begin your presentation by responding to some of the things that have struck you from what Timothy has said, but also from what the other panelists have said as well.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. So I'm Sarah Malia. I'm so happy to be on this panel with you know, these wonderful other panelists from diverse backgrounds and professions. Yes, so I am the co-founder and producer at an illustration and animation studio. What makes the illustration and animation studio that I work for to be slightly particular is that we completely focus on social impact projects. So we create our own content that speaks about a number of different issues that are affecting mostly Kenyan society, but we do have a bit of a Pan-African approach. And we also partner with organizations, other artists to produce contact with them. I do have so I have worked in the refugee and migration sector for a very, very long time. I started working in refugee camps in Malta, which is my country of origin, when I was 18 years old. Malta is very, very close. It's a tiny, tiny island that is literally in the crossroads between Libya and Italy. So when I was around 10 years old, this phenomenon, you know, happened where a number of people started crossing the Mediterranean. So early on in my career, I noticed the extreme importance of arts in promoting inclusion, in promoting awareness around the rights of refugees, in creating empathy, you know, in a mostly xenophobic society, and also, of course, communicating important information to the refugees and migrants themselves. So that's a little bit about my background. Going off what Timothy Awase has very, very rightly highlighted. And by the way, Timothy, I really, really, really commend the Film Commission this year. I was so blown away, not only by the stimulus package, but also the empowerment program. I mean, some of the grants that they were giving out were very big grants that you normally get from Sundance Institute and other big. So that was so wonderful to see that finally, you know, Kenyan filmmakers, local filmmakers are being supported by the Film Commission, because there is a lot of incredibly amazing content that is out there and that is being produced at the moment in all different sectors of the arts. But I think currently film in particular and documentary film is experiencing a renaissance in Kenya. if you look at documentary films like The Letter, like Softy, other films like Supermodo, I mean, these are just films that have reached, you know, international standards. So I think this is a really, really, really interesting time, because I think Kenyan filmmakers have received the exposure, but also found their authenticity that is within themselves to create stories and to share stories that are incredibly, incredibly impactful, and that I believe have the potential to change, right? To create the change needed in our societies. Yes. I don't know if that I should answer any. You wanted me to focus on anything else for now?
Thank you so much, Sarah. Actually, I think my second question is just a build up to what you just said about the stimulus package.
Yes.
Of course, we do know that President Uhuru Kenyatta announced 100 million shilling stimulus package as part of the country's COVID-19 response. Just building up to what you've just said and what Timothy shared with us, do you have any good examples of Kenyan artists that have used, you know, this kind of support and used the arts for social change, either during or before the pandemic?
Oh gosh, there are so many. I mean, I worked at Power 254 for 2 years, you know. That was from, I think, 2013, 2015. And I was completely blown away by the amount of artists, be they spoken word artists, be they filmmakers, you know, be they illustrators, be they animators, the amount of incredible work that has been produced over the years. I think that a lot of people didn't have a platform to share this work. Oh, and not forget music as well. Music also. I mean, there have been so many protest songs and songs from social change that have come out of Kenya as well. I think that one of the issues, I think there isn't a lack of talent in Kenya. And I know that a lot of talent, everybody is quite, the talent that there is here is quite conscious and driven. I think the problem is that the platforms were limited. I do hope now that one positive that has come out of the coronavirus pandemic is that in a way, the internet space has unified us and brought us together, and that a lot of people have access to this content now. So yeah, there are so many examples. If I just look at the documentary film space, for example, because I work as an impact producer in this space, particularly for the documentary called The Letter, which explores the killing of elderly people who have been accused of witchcraft along the coast. Not only have the filmmakers Maya Leko and Chris King produced a film about this, but they're going to be running an impact campaign. So for the next, let's say, year and a half, we'll be sharing this film with communities, having conversations, and hopefully running an online campaign. I know the film Softy, for example, which is a documentary about Boniface Mwangi, is also going to be doing the same. It's going to be promoting, you know, civil awareness and, you know, throughout the country. So there are so many fantastic examples that are coming out in the film space. I just encourage the government of Kenya and the Film Commission to continue to support these films that are coming out, because I know that there's a lot of will from the artist sides, and they also want to take these films beyond the cinema and into communities and create change from the ground up.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. And I think that's a good segue for Michael. And Michael, will move to mainstream media now. I was talking to a journalist, a Kenyan journalist earlier this year, about the way local media covers issues like migration and you know, refugee issues. And he told me, he taught me a phrase I hadn't heard before. He told me that migration is a page 3 issue. In other words, it doesn't hold the same weight as other topics. Now, this year, of course, we've seen the impact of COVID and other emergencies such as flooding and the locusts that have had on migrants and refugees, of course. For example, a cause that's very close to me, we've seen quite a number of women that are Kenyan workers that are stranded in Beirut. following the August 4 blast in Beirut and COVID pandemic. So against this context, Michael, is migration still considered, in your opinion, a page 3 issue by Kenyan media?
I think whoever you spoke to might have been very optimistic, because to get page 3 must be a big story. I don't think migration will even get page 3. It will be page 5, 6 going forward, deeper into the paper, because when I start at the desk trying to make decisions on what goes onto page 1 and the mainstream media, print, and even TV, it's a debate about what will sell more products, what will get more eyeballs. And I doubt that that comes in close to the politicians and everyone else. Because, okay, the role of the media is to inform, educate, entertain, and influence decision and policies. But the stories need to be emotive and they need to be memorable. So unless the story is told from that perspective and the media houses feel that their audiences will be interested in the emotion that is attached to that story, it won't get even to page 3, leave alone page 5, 6, or 7. It will go into the international pages or a human interest within a magazine, which is an insert. So I think it's how those stories are projected to the media and how it is pitched, and that will most likely get more attention. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much, Michael. And I think maybe just a segue to that is, very quickly, have you observed the differences between the way mainstream media and social media have responded to COVID and other emergencies in 2020 in Kenya? And perhaps you could also speak about global media as well, because you're currently based in the UK.
Yeah, fortunately, the situation has meant that people are seeking for information and they're demanding for information. And because everyone has their gadget close to them, especially if they have the access to one, they will go out there looking for information, and the platforms that exist from Google to everyone else is looking for where this information is. So the media has been forced to create answers to these questions, because if you know about how the internet works, you send out questions and the platforms then put them out there and look for articles that answer those questions, and those ones get more visibility. So the media has been forced to switch from the traditional media like newspapers and radio to go online and put a lot of information on those platforms. Now, the only gap is the quality of the information that's being put out might not be well researched, might not be well written, because maybe they don't have a historical perspective of what the issues are and how things have changed. But COVID has certainly gotten the media to rethink how they deliver information. Online information now is bite-sized, small snippets. But what is encouraging today is that video has become, over the last few years, video has become one of the main ways of communicating to the masses. As you notice on Facebook, on Instagram, there's video content, short but good. So that the challenge for the media houses is, well, they were used to writing 800, 500-word articles. Now they have to condense that to a 1-minute video, which is not easy. And that is what's having them to retrain and rethink how they do what they do. So some of the slides I put together was just to summarize what the role of the media is. And the key thing is that media houses, as they are, they're structured to be trusted, and they're supposed to be credible. So when someone is looking for information, they would trust the Standard, The Nation, New York Times for information that can be verified. And that's the key responsibility of the media. They're the gateway of information. And again, they are consistent. So they consistently put out information for the purpose of educating the masses. And they do it on a daily basis. If you look at BBC, any channel, they have a responsibility to have news, and they have to look for the news. And how that news is made available to them is either through a call or through just trends. Like on Twitter, there's trends. So when something is trending, the journalists go after it. So there's a lot of responsibility on those providing content to put it out there to get the attention of the media. Again, it's key that the information must be accessible and inexpensive. I'm sure Timothy will attest to this, that right now the channels, the platforms that are putting out entertainment content, the Netflix, the Prime, it costs $10 a month. If you look at Africa, how many people can afford $10 a month when they're living on $1 a day? So we must find new ways of getting this information available at a cheaper rate, if not free. Again, the media also needs to inspire positive change in the societies in which they operate. And this means improving the livelihoods of everyone, including the refugees that are within those countries. And that it's not easy, but they have the best chance of having that happen because they are trusted. Challenges, like I said, is Netflix is expensive. There's low interest in the film industry. And I've been talking to players in the film industry about why don't they have enough space within the mainstream media? Why doesn't the media give them the attention they give sport, for example, and politics? I mean, sport is entertaining, yes, but so is film. Why do documentaries only appear at the late hour when no one's watching? Is this because we don't believe the audiences have the appetite for it? One of the key things the media is saying is that the quality of productions locally is not as good. It has improved over the years, but it hasn't been good for a very long time. So, and that is a key challenge, which now is being addressed by Timothy by offering grants so that people can do better quality with the little money they get. But the key thing, which Timothy also mentioned, and which I'm very glad he mentioned, is how can the film creators create the market, the commercialization opportunities? Because the media, when I was trying to pitch to the media to sell a product, they asked me, can we sell advertising on this? Can we earn from it? And I was sent away. Even though I was within the media, I was told we can't put that online because it will not bring us any money. So the producers must think, how can they engage the media and get them to see the commercial opportunity around the products they are putting forward? Of course, the last government reduced tax on equipment, so getting film equipment has become easier. I bought my equipment and I was very lucky to pay less than I would have had to pay a long time ago. We need to do more in terms of creating the perception in the mind of everyone in the industry that this is a billion-dollar industry. Think about last year when the Oscars were held. Who sponsored it? It was the media house. Why can't an African media house see that opportunity and then take African content and create a buzz around it that gets everyone looking? And that means everyone concerned, including the actors and the producers, would all be elevated to another status that everyone is dying for. So those were my few remarks regarding how the media can plug in and actually be a catalyst. I don't know if it answers the question.
It does. Thank you so much, Michael. And of course, we'll get back to you in the second round of presentations so that we can hear more from you about your insights on the media. But going back to Eugene now, in our second round of presentations, Eugene, just going back, we've heard about how Kenya's media industry has adapted to some of the challenges that we've seen in 2020, especially with all these changes that we've seen in the country and around the world. Just thinking about UNHCR and other humanitarian agencies, have you had to adapt as well as an industry, as a humanitarian sector? And then, of course, also thinking about the beneficiaries that you serve as an agency, refugees, asylum seekers, and other migrants. What would you say about the way they have adapted this year, particularly? And I know you touched on some of these things during your initial presentation, but if you could just dive in some more, please.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course, that like other people in the world, and then every other sector, such humanitarian sector, has to also change and adopt the situation the COVID-19 posed, such as a travel restriction. The first thing that actually UNHCR did when there was a first case in Kenya was that we actually suspended all the mission to going to the Kakuma and Dadaab, because we knew the risk, we knew the impact that one case in Dadaab and Kakuma, how fast it can spread, and then how actually it's interesting perspective that how outsider can actually bring the virus to the camp and pose the risk to refugee population, where the Niall mentioned that like a physical distancing was extremely difficult, and the health standard in the camp is of course lower than any other part of the world. So we have to be extremely careful about it. At the same time that because we didn't bring the essential stuff at the moment because of travel restriction, of course, and now that we're working with the government so that we can bring the necessary health worker the doctor and nurse to the Kakuma and Dadaab. But I think the important thing is how refugees step in. I will emphasize again that how refugee health worker, how refugee volunteer, how a refugee filmmaker step in. So when there was no media can access to the camp, I have to emphasize how the refugee filmmaker step in, then showing the situation in the camp to the world, because otherwise there was no access and no media could go and visit and then show that how difficult the situation is in the refugee camp. So that time that a refugee filmmaker filmed for the major media like the BBC and Al Jazeera, and then because they have to take footage from the Kakuma and Dadaab, and then their choice was refugees who are trained to film and then trained to write the story from the refugee camp. So that's why that we have to actually invest to those refugee youth, because they can do more than anyone in public imagine. They have so much potential, and then sometimes the people public think that refugee can be a burden, but I actually differ those opinion, because I witnessed so many example of refugee, how the refugee doctor step in when there is a health emergency, how the refugee nurse, and then that actually can be done only through the training and then investment. So and then we also witness how the refugee actually contribute to the host community, the socio-economic, with their business and then with their livelihood activity. So there is so much potential in refugee camp. Of course, there is a challenge that beyond that we imagine that, and then also that the president recently mentioned that we have to invest the refugee youth so that they can contribute their skill to the society they're hosting, and then also beyond that when they go back to their country. So that's also that give us the COVID-19 give us the different perspective. Of course, there is a lot of a negative perspective the COVID-19 brought, but also that it gave us the different perspective and how we can going forward within the humanitarian sector, how we can actually invest to refugee youth who can contribute to the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Eugene. And before I hand over to Nihal to respond to some of the things that you've raised, I'm going to read a reaction from some of our listeners now. There is a question from a colleague based in Nairobi, asking why is it so hard to access local content as a consumer? We have a film trainer asking, a young person who's a film trainer listening in from Nairobi as well, saying that a lot of young people now operate YouTube channels. Has the consumer space changed so that it is now youth-centric? And secondly, what about other consumers? Who is producing content and where is it found? So as we continue discussing and sharing our insights, those are some of the questions that are coming in from the people who are listening in. And I will encourage our viewers and attendees to continue reacting and as we go along. Of course, as I say, there's a 30 minutes space towards the end of this panel for our panelists to respond to some of these questions and feedback that is coming in. Thank you so much to those two individuals that have shared their feedback so far. And Nihal, will move on to you now. Eugene has talked about how UNHCR and other humanitarian agencies, not only in Kakuma and Dadaab and Kalobey, have adapted to the way they operate and the way they work given the pandemic. We know that there are over 490,000 refugees hosted in these 3 refugee complexes. Many of them come from South Sudan, Somalia, but of course we have nationals from the Great Lakes as well. As well as other countries in the Greater Eastern and Horn of Africa. So Eugene, I'd like to hear your perspective on, since you are on the ground, you're part of this community, what are some of your thoughts based on what Eugene has shared? Eugene has told us it's very important to invest on the refugee youth and their communities. And that in situations like this year that is completely unprecedented, where there are travel restrictions, where media and other experts, such as health experts, are not able to actually travel into the complex, that it's very important to have the members of the community enhancing their skills and actually providing these services themselves. What do you have to say about that, Nihal? We seem to have lost Nihal. We seem to have lost Nihal. So I think I might ask Sarah to maybe respond to that, just based on what Eugene has said, as we wait for Nihal to log back in.
Could you repeat the question, please? If you're going to throw something at me, you can repeat the question.
I will repeat the question. I will repeat the question, Sarah. Thank you. So basically, in a nutshell, if you could respond to some of the things that Eugene just shared with us. She said, yes, the humanitarian agencies have had to adapt to COVID-19, of course, and adapt in terms of the way they work and the way they engage with their beneficiaries. But she has highlighted that it's very important for these agencies who are working for refugees and in support of refugees to invest on refugee youth and their communities, and to make sure that they're able to actually provide the services to their communities members themselves. She's highlighted media, and she's highlighted also health provision. And of course, quite a number of agencies operating here in Kakuma are already doing that, including FilmAid. FilmAid works with quite a number of staff from the refugee community. But I just wanted you to respond to some of these things. Tell us what you think about, how the refugees, and especially young refugee youth, can be better enhanced their skills to really respond to some of these things that we're talking about today.
Indeed. No, and Eugene, you're completely right. It is, I think, across different sectors in Kenya, you have seen large, for example, news agencies now looking at locals, right, to produce the work. And that has been something really, really interesting to witness. Huge kudos to FilmAid for believing in the power of refugees to tell their own stories. I think the people that are sitting here in this conversation know how much more powerful an authentic story is. And I think Kenya as a whole needs to learn this lesson and needs to invest in its own, in the people living here, be they refugees or citizens. Another example I can give is the wildlife sector. Filmmaking in the wildlife sector was mostly done by Europeans or people, Kenyans of European descent. And I think for the first time, I have a few friends who are working in the wildlife industry. They're getting called from Nat Geo, BBC. So there is a lot of local talent, and we need to make sure that we support this local talent because unfortunately, a lot of the time, from what I see, artists, and then if you have a refugee who is an artist or a filmmaker, there are so many barriers, right, that we meet. There's no, as Timothy said before, there's no income that's coming in. It's very difficult to take a loan. It's very difficult to find the capital to build up your studio. So I think there are a lot of stories here. There's a lot of power here, and I spoke to somebody who is very, very, very big in the animation sector, and they're a judge on the Emmy Awards and many other things. And she said the stories are here, the stories are on this continent. We just need to support the people with the infrastructure. And how do we build that infrastructure? I guess we build it together, and that is where collaboration and communication between the different sectors becomes so important. One thing I want to mention about looking at refugees filmmakers in particular, I think these are individuals who have experienced some of the most extraordinary things in their lives. They have gone through, experiences that you and I couldn't even imagine. So the amount of resilience and the amount of experience that can be shared is absolutely incredible. So let's you know, believe in them. Again, I've been working in the sector for like 12 years now, and I think the most incredible people I have ever met can be found in these refugee camps. If only if we can give them access, you know, to services, and if only they can be integrated, I think the things that could be done would be absolutely incredible.
Thank you very much for those insights, Sarah. And I see Nihal is back now. Nihal, welcome back. Nihal, I am going to ask you the same question that I asked Sarah. Perhaps if you could tell us in your own words, what needs to be done in Kakuma, in Kalobeye, in the Dadaab refugee complexes, particularly where young people are concerned, young people such as yourself, who are aspiring filmmakers, aspiring journalists, aspiring artists, aspiring entrepreneurs as well, to enable them to really take up the opportunities that Timothy was highlighting earlier, and that Michael was also highlighting. What is it that needs to be done to strengthen this local talent?
Good, thank you so much. You know, there's a common saying that talent is everywhere in the world, but opportunities are very scarce and they're not equally distributed. And I think that is the case in a place like Kakuma, where there's so much talent that is being overlooked. And coming to what can be done, you know, there are many young people in the camp who have so much potential, who have so much talent, but they don't have opportunities that can help them, you know, reach that talent. But before I go into what, you know, need to be done specifically, I would say, you know, storytelling, I think, is very much powerful, because if I look at, you know, the narrative of refugees, for example, the Western narrative of refugees, which is becoming the wholly dominant narrative of refugees, have the most, you know, dangerous effect of reducing human beings into mere tale of devastation and suffering. And I think today stories about the displaced are being told through, you know, external observers, humanitarian organizations, journalists, leaving the original voice silent. And I think stories are very powerful because they stimulate understanding, they change how people think, and they also create a sense of urgency that will move people into action. And there's a very big difference between, you know, reading a story or hearing a story than hearing from that person. So I think the most important thing that needs to be done first is to make sure refugees have a platform where they can share their stories, to make sure refugees, you know, stories are told, you know, through their own voices, you know, in a way that they would like their story to be told. So I think if young people are empowered, you know, to share their stories, I think that will make a very significant difference. For example, you know, if you came to understand that someone wants to be a filmmaker or has a dream of being a filmmaker, and, you know, maybe as a humanitarian organization, you used to give them handouts and hate before, you know, why don't you support them with equipment? You know, why don't you support them with a platform where they can share their work? And that cannot happen through storytelling, because through a story, you'll be able to know that story. You know, you'll be able to hear their story in their own words, and that will inform your solutions. So I think, you know, giving young refugees a platform where they can share their stories, you know, helping them to access, you know, funding, helping them to access, you know, equipment that can help them do their work. I think that will make a huge and significant difference, you know, in helping them, you know, unleash their full potentials and being able, you know, to thrive again, not just survive.
Thank you for that, Nihal. Thank you so much for that. And Timothy, I think that builds on to you, my next question, because you had mentioned the question of distribution channels earlier. You say there are various platforms that could be used, and that young filmmakers and journalists as well could use, including mobile handsets. Now, Nihal has talked about the importance of providing refugees a platform to tell their stories. Could you please just give us your perspective on this and maybe build up onto your original presentation?
Thank you. First of all, I think we have to appreciate the fact that refugees are in our midst, and they deserve the best from the host countries, just the same way they will be supported in their home countries. By that, I call on FilmAid. I think it's now urgent that we need to collaborate more on matters film within the jurisdictions or as supported by UNHCR. As I mentioned earlier, there are quite a number of programs that we undertake, which a young fellow like Nihal can be able to benefit from. For example, Nihal needs to be able to connect with other filmmakers beyond the refugee camp so that they're able to tell their stories, not only focusing on his surrounding, but beyond, because these stories are meant to be consumed by all of us. About monetization, from that interaction with an understanding of what is it that Nihal can be able to access, financing for his production, marketing opportunities or distribution, and also how they can be able how we can be able to integrate refugees into accessing collective management organizations, that is CMOs. CMOs collect royalties for artists. Are refugees able to access these particular platforms? So I think there is a lot more that we need to fix. At the same time, also to work closely with the UNHCR in just availing these facilities within the refugee camps. The Commission, and I think I'll speak on behalf of my board, I'm willing to partner with you to come to Kakuma and even stage maybe a festival within the FilmAid Festival to have a component where there is integration between the refugees and the rest of the populace. Also, the content that is created in these restricted camps, how do we access them generally? How do you ensure that this content can be bought by a VOD? Remember, in Kenya alone, we have video on demand platforms like Showmax, we've had iFlix, and there are many more coming up. There are international platforms that are also looking for good content. I think it's all about fixing all elements across the entire value chain, from storytelling to marketing and distribution, and as well understanding who our audience is. Remember, in my opening remarks, I was very clear that film is a powerful tool in our society for behavior change, societal change, and this touches on both political, social, and economic being of our environment. And also, I do not want to ignore the fact that for Nihal to be able to produce a big budget film, he actually needs to interact with Sarah and many more. I'm just giving that as an example. So that collaborative effort is also key. I think I can go on and on, but takeaways are FilmAid and UNHCR, you can be able to collaborate with us more and see which programs really can add value to what you are doing. I know I mentioned capacity building. There is the Empowerment Fund. The Empowerment Fund, it's a call that we send out every year. Like for this financial year, we are sending out a call next month. And this is open to anyone to apply. So how do you ensure that Nihal can be able to qualify to be one of the applicants if he has a project that needs support? Other than that, we are also now buying content to be screened on Y254, which is a KBC channel. The intention here, we want to structure the film industry in a way that we operate in a more organized and structured manner. If Malia, as a producer, is able to contract young filmmakers and other experienced filmmakers, what is the process? Are these people aware about the intellectual property and copyright rights? Or how do we contract, how do we connect? Because that's the only way to create wealth out of these products. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Timothy, and for highlighting the role of and the importance of collaboration, and of course for sharing your willingness to partner with UNHCR, with FilmAid, and I'm certain that willingness spreads to other relevant organizations as well. We do believe in the power of partnerships, and we welcome that willingness. And I'm sure all the young aspiring refugee and other local filmmakers who are listening in. Quite excited to hear that such support exists, such as the Empowerment Fund. I'll move on to Sarah now. Sarah, my final question to you today is now thinking about the future. What does an ideal post-COVID future look like for the arts and film sector in Kenya?
Thank you, Nkorote. Wow, that's a good question. So firstly, I think firstly I'm going to say what I think should happen, and then I'm going to say why it should happen, right? So just as the Kenya Film Commission are doing at the moment, I think there needs to be continuous support of filmmakers. And by support, I don't only mean finances, but I also mean training, which is really important, access to equipment and access to markets, a very, 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 very important thing that Timothy highlighted earlier. I think a lot of artists and filmmakers are so focused on, you know, making the film, and so much time and energy goes into that. Afterwards, how do you market the film? How do you monetize from the film? You know, how do you start understanding the international film festival market? So I think there needs to be a lot of training. When I say a filmmaker as well, I'm going to be clear. Filmmakers come in many different shapes and sizes. Till I made a short film myself, I didn't understand how many people are involved in one film. You have the DOP, you have a director, you have a producer, you know, you have sound engineers, so important. Let's also invest in sound. Let's also give training in how to, sound is so essential. And I really feel it's something that we really lack over here. There are so many different people anyway that work on a film. So if only we can give access to resources for all of these different actors in making films, I think that would be a really important first step. Again, one thing that I really believe in, I believe that film, and in particular film, right, has a rare ability to create deep empathy in audiences. And this can result in something that is very rare, which is somebody's worldview shifting, right? And I think film is one of the only ways that we can do this. I'm sure that everybody in this panel here and a number of people watching have watched a film or a documentary that has changed them. It had happened to me so many times. I've watched so many documentaries that have changed me, you know, or changed the way I look at things. So it's just an extremely powerful medium to do good, and to create change and to create dialogue and to bring people together, be it online or offline. I also think that if we look at the world around us, things aren't very okay. You know, things are a bit topsy-turvy. There is growing inequality, and I think this inequality is most stark, you know, in protracted situations like refugee camps, where you have people who are born in refugee camps and live in refugee camps for 20 years. You know, why are they not being included into the society? One thing that film can do is that they can allow us to reimagine a better world. What will it look like if refugees are integrated into society? What would it look like if refugees are given the skills? Can we create the stories that can help, you know, the public, our leaders envisage these kind of worlds? So I'm calling on all the filmmakers who are watching here today. Don't be scared to imagine. Don't be scared to construct worlds that are a little bit different. I think we need something that's different. I think what we have at the moment isn't really working. And I think it's up to artists. You know, science fiction is all about that. So many, you know, science fiction writers, we also create comic books and graphic novels where I work, imagine different worlds. And some of these worlds come true. So I think it's up to artists to take that leap and to be brave, you know. Don't feel scared to share your own story, and don't feel scared to share a vision of a better world. And I think that refugees are some of the people who have been disrespected the most, you know. So yeah, share your stories and share your visions. I think that is so important. So I hope that in a post, I think COVID-19 has really showed us that things are not working in many different ways. So let's time to reimagine now and to create our own stories and share them with the world.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. And of course, this week, on the third day of our webinar series, we will be hosting the Refugees Affairs Secretariat, a colleague from the Refugees Affairs Secretariat, who can definitely answer to this question of inclusion and integration, because this is a discussion that has been had in Kenya and in the rest of the region as well. And it has definitely come up twice.
And the world. It's not only Kenya, it's the world.
And the world. Thank you for pointing that out, Sarah. So just for the sake of our listeners, we encourage you to keep engaging with us throughout the week, and of course to watch the films that are being screened and that have been submitted from both locations, from both Kakuma and Dadaab refugee complex, and of course from our local filmmakers as well. Moving back to the present, Michael, Sarah just told us about a future that she imagines and a future that we should reimagine as well. But moving back to the present, tell us about the media landscape. And I think 2020 has been an interesting year for local media. But just looking at the last decade of the 21st century, how has the landscape in Kenya and maybe perhaps in the rest of the East African region been changing?
I think it's changed drastically and dramatically, because except 2020, when we had COVID, that forced us to really re-examine our priorities. Before that, we were playing a game of ignoring the obvious, ignoring the impact of the digital space. And the media continued it was business as usual. And the digital landscape just crept up upon the local media. And I remember when I was in the media, because I left just before it happened, and it was like, hey, it's never going to replace traditional media, but it did. And now we have the Googles and we have Prime, we have everyone else taking space within the media. And I recently just decided to Google Kenyan films and what I could find and what productions I would see and what would come up. And it was interesting. And I had to ask friends who were in Kenya to do the same Google search, because we know how Google works. Depending on where you are and what you've been looking at previously, it will then present what it thinks you need to see. And shockingly, if you type in African films, most of the productions that come up are those that have been produced in the West for Africa or about Africa. If you type Kenya, you'll get some, like what you see on screen, Rafiki and some amazing productions that have taken place. And this is what people will look for when they're looking for something different. Now, what we have ignored as a community, a media community, is how can we then manipulate the tools that are available to the media to then show our products. And that requires going into the back end and putting all the necessary catchwords that ensure that your content shows up when someone looks for it. So I'd like to tell all the filmmakers and the refugees out there, if you're creating content, be sure to go further and put in the back end search engine optimization, use those tools to ensure that your products are able to be found when someone searches for them. So what can the media do? The media needs to write more about the products that are coming out of Africa and write them critically so that when the search engines look at the questions being asked, those answers are found within those articles. And now this is where I think Timothy must also chip in and say, how can we help the media understand how to use this platform better? That might involve identifying people that are interested and are passionate about film, because the reason we don't have quality media about film and productions is we don't have passionate people in the media houses interested in the subject. So we need to create the interest and then give them information and exposure. One of the ways to expose the media to this industry is to give them access to the festivals that are happening across the world. And there are many. There's a festival for almost everything. So it's very easy to get awards in the film industry. as long as you know what to look for, so that then we can have more people understanding the industry, writing about it from a point of authority, and that then will also allow people then to know how to look for content. Another thing that would help is in Africa, we need to have platforms that can bring down the costs of getting this content being accessed by the population, especially the population that can't afford your $10 a month. The key thing that came out when I was discussing with both stakeholders was the people creating content for the passion of content, the artists who are doing amazing stories, don't quite respect the critics who are available in Africa to critique their work, because they're so passionate about it, they care less about what you think. And on the other hand, there are those producing very mediocre content, and they too don't care what the critics say, because for them it's make as much money from each production and run. They have no passion for it. So we have to bridge the gap and create more people doing it for the real passion of the subject. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does, Michael. Thank you very much. And of course, as the final speaker, you have the most difficult task, because I'm going to ask you to summarize some of the key takeaways from today's panel, and to give us the call for action.
Okay. Today it's been amazing for me, because as a person who's been in the media and who has also an interest in creating content and designing content, because I'm a designer, I have been listening very keenly like a fly on the wall, and I'm excited about the future. Eugene spoke about the refugees, and I think one of the takeaways I'm getting from this is that we need to demystify the role of refugees wherever they are in the world. Because sometimes the local countries and the hosts look at them as that problem that we have to deal with for a period of time before they move on to where they need to be. But we know now that it takes a lot longer for countries to stabilize, and a lot needs to be done to be more useful in that process of reintegrating them with their homeland. So I've learned that we need to demystify it, and we need to tell their stories and tell them well. So how do we do this? I think we need to find a way to get people from the refugee environment to be integrated with communities. And for example, within the media, is it possible for refugees to get internships at the media houses, where they can come for a few months and get an experience of how it is to tell stories within the context of normal society, because the stories have to be told in a way that would be interesting for your normal audience, because not everyone would be interested in a story about a place where they have little connection to. So that's one of the things that I took out from that presentation. This population, the refugee population, contributes to the host communities around them. And there's a lot of transferable skills that can come out of that relationship. We need to examine those and see what is it that we can take away from their experience and how they see the world, and how we can use that to train the youth, especially that are not in this situation, that have no connection and feel very entitled. Because the young people we're bringing up feel very entitled because they've never seen problems. So they need to see what it could be. And that then can change how they elect their leaders and just change the world we live in. Timothy excited me immensely, because there's always been complaints that the government is not doing this, the government is not doing that, the government must save us from this and from that. And now the tables have turned. The government has a budget, it has a system, it has resources, and it has someone at the helm who has been at this for a while and knows it, because he's been in the system. And speaking to the people in the industry, Moniki Magaria and many other people, Gikunda, they are saying this is the best time to be in this industry. And Sarah has just also confirmed that. It's the best time to be in this creative industry. So I think what is lacking now is a channel for this information to be disseminated to more people out there, leave alone those that are already in it, those that aspire to be a creative, and their parents must be told, finally, it's okay to be a creative, an actor, and you should not look down upon it. Not everyone can be a doctor and a lawyer. So this is a very good time, and these stories need to be told. And that's why I think the media needs to be engaged interactively and consistently so that this information is let out to the public and they know that young people coming up can create a whole livelihood. One of the key things that worries me is social media. And a lot of the content on social media is not very good for the youth because it creates a picture that life can be all glam. So we need to be able to tell stories about what really is happening and tell it so that we can save a lot of the youth from mental issues that are associated with some of the social media platforms that exist. And I think more content that comes from creatives that kind of creates a true picture of what life can be would be key to helping us save the future generations. And I think the government and the bodies concerned can control. I know it's not Timothy's docket, but his counterpart Mutua are doing a lot to control the content that comes out from Sarah and the team. I think the festival is a good idea. So let's do the festival, and I can't wait to come to Turkana and dance under the stars. Bringing down cost of the platforms that allow us to see the films. I think Timothy says that's being worked on. We've got iFlix, we've got Showmax. And the key thing that he mentioned, IP, intellectual property. A lot of young people would come up with ideas, and the ideas will be stolen by producers and distributors. And it's not enough information about when a distributor takes your product and puts it out there, how much should you earn? Yeah. And a lot of people will complain about not getting the rewards from their sweat. So perhaps more information about that through the media can be told to all these people out there. There's so much Timothy said, and it might take up a lot of time to go through it, the legal framework, the business acumen. That's a key thing, because one of the things I realized when I was trying to do some content is how can you interest the corporate world to sponsor these productions? So there's one thing, there's advertising in the media. YouTube will pay you if there are views, but there's also product placement. Very clever product placement can earn producers a lot of money. Because if a film has product placed within it and it views for 10 years plus, and there's a contract, you can continue to earn from that in perpetuity for many, many years to come. And a lot of people don't know that and are not able to design contracts that save them a lot of time and make them a lot of money. So I think that is another avenue that we need to really highlight. Sarah, you have the most exciting job because animation is one way to target the very young. And in Africa, we need to target them and to sensitize them about what Africa means and how can we save them from not ever getting to understand the culture in Africa. Because now they're bombarded with a lot of content that perhaps might not be very useful going forward, especially in the African context. And if we can create a narrative around that and content around that and collaborate with various mediums, we can tell stories to the youth and the young ones especially, so that their minds are not entirely swayed in the wrong direction. Niall, I think you are in the best place to change the next generation of refugees. My hope is that we will never need to have a refugee situation, but in reality, it will continue to happen. So if we can tell those stories, if refugees can get out of Kakuma and Dadaab and be integrated and then take back information to those that are still there, and also get those of us who are not in that situation to understand it, I think you can do a very key, you can play a very key role in this. So my takeout is the challenge is to communicate, and that's why the media has the biggest role. How can we tell what Timothy is doing in a way that we can consistently get people to engage in this industry? And unfortunately, I don't think there's enough communication. I have been speaking to editors who decide on what goes in. And I know, for example, that Timothy had a conversation with a specific editor I know very well, I think last week or the week before, on the same subject. So there's a lot going on in the back end, but we need more volume. So after this, we have to get back to the drawing board, connect once again and see how can we then effect it consistently so that the story, if you tell it once, it will not be hard. We have to keep on telling the stories over and over again. And FilmAid and UNHCR, I think you're doing a great thing. I don't know how long you will do it for, but I pray that you will do it long enough so that the impact can be felt. And we have generations of film producers and content creators coming out of these programs so that we can empower people to do more and say more and be more. I think I managed to cover most of it. I don't know if we have time, but if there's anything I missed. I think the microphone is not on. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Michael, thank you very much for that summary. You've put it quite succinctly. I think we all really appreciate you taking the time to share all these insights with us. Thank you to the rest of the panelists as well. We've really enjoyed it. It's amazing how fast time has flown. It's already 1 hour. We only have 30 minutes now left before we come to an end. So we thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with us. We thank you for obviously the preparation that you've had to do before coming to share with us. And we would like to invite our viewers and attendees now to our Q&A session. We do already have some questions and reactions coming in, so I'll read them out now, but I would like to invite everyone else who is listening in and who is watching us to keep on sharing your reactions and your comments and your questions on the chat boxes on the YouTube Live and Facebook Live pages. So I'll start off with a radio journalist that is based in Kakuma, that is called Balu, who says that media is a powerful tool, especially for refugees who are unable to tell their story. There is a lady called Neema in Nairobi who has a question. I think this is possibly directed to Timothy. And the question here is it possible to create an online platform or channel where one can access content produced within the camps? Perhaps either Timothy or Sarah or Michael can respond to that.
I can proceed?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, you know, when you talk about VOD platforms, for me, my straight answer would be, that's a business opportunity. Anyone is open to actually take it up and run with it. For us, we are there to facilitate business environment to be conducive for you to be able to make profitable businesses around film. That's why we encourage collaborations. If at all the person asking this question is a young person that needs to be supported in terms of mentorship and the support system that will enable this particular development of that particular idea into fruition, then we at the Commission, we are open to take it up and see how far we can be able to get. Of course, the intention is to create an ecosystem that supports all.
Thank you so much for that. We do have another question, and it is for Michael. This is coming from Mercy, who talks about the fact that young people, not only in the refugee context, but elsewhere in Kenya, operate YouTube channels. Has the consumer space changed so that it is now youth-centric? What about other consumers? Who is producing this content and where is it found? Michael, please, over to you.
Thank you, Mercy. Thanks for the question. YouTube is, it requires a bit of homework. You need to really understand how to partner with YouTube. It's available for everyone, and it divides between adults and children. So if it's content for children, you have to be very specific so that they can control the content. What is important to understand about YouTube is you can create amazing content, you must do the quality, but you must also have the numbers. they would like you to have as many views as possible for them to then plug adverts on your content, which then generates revenue for them. So the key thing to understand is your content good enough for it to be watched across a larger group of people? And what happens in Kenya, in many places, a lot of content is targeted at the local consumer, people that perhaps you understand. And we then forget that it could be accessed by a broader audience, which then brings in things like having subtitles. So depending on what you're talking about and the subject, you need to design it such that YouTube then will feel that it's necessary to expand the viewership, which then earns you money. So I don't know if that answers the question, but YouTube is a huge opportunity for you. But there's more than YouTube. There's Vimeo, there's many other platforms that allow you to get your videos viewed by many people. And you can go to Instagram. It all depends on what your content is, who it's targeted at, and if you're doing a quality job, which means invest in a bit of equipment, lighting and everything else. And you can do a lot more.
Thank you so much for that, Michael. Our next question again is to Timothy.
I think Sarah wanted to add.
Yes, would you like to add some more?
Yes, I just wanted to add something. I think the opportunities that there are at the moment are many. I think there are so many they can be a little bit overwhelming. Myself, as somebody who works, for example, runs community screenings, COVID really affected my work because I'm like, okay, how do I reach communities who don't have access to smartphones, right? But there are quite a number of solutions. So I don't know if it would be possible for someone, be it the Kenya Film Commission or be it a partner of the Kenya Film Commission, to put up like a kind of toolkit for filmmakers that lists all of these different platforms down. I know there's also Vumi TV in Kenya. There are so many things over here. Like it's really, really incredible what people are doing. I think access to that knowledge is what is important, right? Is the key. So yeah, something like a toolkit that can be shared, and it can be online. It can be a workshop that allows young, emerging filmmakers just to be given the different options that there currently are. That's just a takeaway. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. There is a question for Timothy again now from Mukhtar, from Fatuma in Dadaab. And Fatuma says, Timothy, that's a great initiative to partner with UNHCR and FilmAid to support filmmakers in refugee camps. We need a strategy of marketing this content outside the camps. Timothy, over to you.
Thank you. At my level, I would prepare the national strategy, but at a filmmaker's level, prepare a business strategy for your own entity. I know we do a lot of capacity building in that area, but remember, I'll give you a simple example. If I was to tell a story about a village in Turkana, I will do my entire homework in terms of research. I should be in a position to tell how much I would like to recoup if I am able to sell this particular product well to my expectation. Do a proper business plan. Know exactly how you're going to market this particular product. Who are the artists or the people who will participate in this product to give it the reach in terms of where you want to sell it. In addition to that, be prepared to have the copies available in the platform that is envisioned in your plan. Basically, what I'm trying to say, you can't be everything. We have to have structures in place. If you're a producer, produce the film and let the distributor do the distribution. Of course, when we have that kind of communication, then all will be well. For the question, I want to encourage filmmakers across the country and beyond that we have put in place what we call Kalasha International Film and TV Market. Why did we put out this particular market? So that we provide you with a platform for you to be able to connect with both local and international buyers and sellers of content. So the market platform we have given you, besides the VODs and other avenues that are present. And I'm also working on putting in place what we call the audiovisual CMO, which means anytime your content is being played by, let's say, a TV station, you should be able to earn from that, just the same way musicians are earning from these CMOs in terms of royalties. So that and many more. I also encourage the filmmakers in the refugee camps to follow us on both Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, because we churn out a lot of good information that will be able to help them achieve their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy. And I think maybe before we go on to the other questions, I do have a question that I would like to pose to Nihal. Nihal, you've had a lot of feedback today from your fellow panelists. We've talked about the situation as it has been in Kakuma and the rest of the refugee complexes in Kenya in 2020. But I would like to ask you to share with us your vision for the future, just speaking to today's and this year's theme.
Thank you, Nicole. I think, I would just build on what Michael said before, that, in the future, we should have no more refugees. And I think, I hope, there's more to be done to make sure, I always believe the most important solution, the most effective solution is to prevent people from fleeing their own country in the first place. So I hope stability comes to this country, people are able to go back home, but also I hope that these people, refugees in the future will have access to global, opportunities and also be part of global, be it events, be it, opportunities, whereby, every single discussion, our refugees on board, and no one is left behind. Because if you look at achieving the sustainable development goals, we'll not achieve them if we leave anyone behind. So it's crucial that we have everyone on board, because we are all experts of our own experiences. And it will bring all of us in our diversity, to be able to build a more peaceful, just, secure, and sustainable world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nihal. And I see Eugene raising her hand. Eugene, would you like to share something with us about this year's film festival theme?
No, I just want to echo the Timothy and Nihal's message to the youth and then the refugee filmmaker, because once I was a film student and who submitted my film to a lot of festivals. So when you do the research that there is a lot, even small film festival that you can submit your film. So when you, before you make a film, that you have to also think about it, especially when there is a lot of opportunity out there for the student. So I was once a documentary film student that I submitted like a 20-30 festival per film. So there is when you research, there is a lot of opportunity, and then Mr. Timothy mentioned that there is also the funding that you can get it from the commission. So you have to also be very proactive as a filmmaker. It's about the pitching your story and then selling your story. It's from the beginning till end. Being a filmmaker is about the pitching your story and how you present your film and the product, and then how you sell your end product to the world. So you have to convince so many people. So I think the research is a part of also marketing and then selling your product. So go out there in internet. That there is a lot of a festival that even you never heard about. You go out there and then just proactively and submit your film. I know that I've seen the student film, and it's amazing. And then I'm sure that there is a potential, and then there is a certain the festival who are interested in those kind of stuff. And because it's rare, because it's just so rare, and then their story is so powerful, and then not many people actually know about the refugee, how their daily life is. So there is interest, there is appetite for the refugee story. So I think it's also for the refugee filmmaker fellow filmmaker that I want to give a message. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Eugene. It is quite important for refugee and other local filmmakers to take initiative. So thank you for highlighting that. We do have another 15 minutes, so I'd like to encourage our attendees to keep sharing their questions with us and their reactions as well. I see, before I move on to the next question, I see Michael's hand was raised. So please, Michael, the floor is yours. Michael, your mic is, please unmute your mic.
Sorry about that. I have a question for Nihal, well, a challenge and a question for Timothy. In 1984, something amazing happened. There was a discovery, the Turkana boy. And this is a key thing that happened out there, and we discovered a fossil that was 2 million years old. I think it would be nice for the community out there, refugees and locals, anyone doing film, to find ways to tell that story from Kenyan perspective, a local perspective, because there's so much that has been discovered out there. But the only people that tell these stories come from the West, who seem more interested in stories about archaeology. It would be interesting to see if Sarah and the teams out there could tell that story from a different perspective and how it can impact our museums and our livelihoods, because museums make a lot of money. And the second question was to Timothy. I don't know if it's the right question for him, but do we have enough colleges and courses out there within the institutions focused on media? And I know we have Kenya Film School, we have KIMC, we have Will Kiumi doing a lot of training out there. Do we have enough of that so that we have more young people finding an actual degree course to do on the subject of film creation and content creation?
Well, thank you. That's a very interesting question about the Turkana boy. I have a very interesting program, Michael. And this program, as we speak now, and I think one of the reasons as to why I joined in a few minutes later is that I was meeting the Lake Region Economic Bloc. The intention is to create room for counties to be able to tell stories. We need not to wait for the national government to come and support the local community. For example, the Turkana County government should actually tell that story from A to Z. So I have an interesting program called My County, My Story. And My County, My Story is an initiative that is aimed at sensitizing counties and also putting money on the table so that also counties can be able to put a fair share so that we are able to tell at least one story by each county. By doing that, then we are encouraging counties to start investing in the sector and also telling real quality stories. You know, there are a few things we would say. You can be able to produce a film. If it's not a good quality film, then it has got no bearing. We need a film that can be able to traverse markets. And that way, then it will definitely be able to connect with the people and also achieve the objective. If it was for a social change or any kind of behavior change in a community or in a society, then you'll be able to attain that. What is constant is that each and every film creates employment. That doesn't change. Also, what it doesn't change is that each and every film provides a platform for skills transfer. And that's why it is so key that when we have a fully functional film industry in Kenya, then the issue of colleges and the papers, you know, it's about the skills. Malia will tell you that she needs a skills workforce. She may have so many people coming in with a lot of good papers, but are these people able to deliver on the ground when given an assignment? And that's why my attracting of international big budget films to be shot on location in Kenya, and also the commission supporting productions within the country is aimed at also creating room for real experience on production. To respond to your question whether there are enough colleges, I think today they are, because almost every university in this country now have a product of either film or media. My only take is the standards that have to be met. And some good news to you is that Kenya Film Commission is partnering with the Ministry of Education, and we have already developed a standard curriculum for animation and ordinary filmmaking. All TVET institutions have now to have that particular curriculum and comply with it 100%, among many more other initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy, and it's great to hear about all these initiatives that the Kenya Film Commission is taking up, and to hear about all the collaborative efforts as well you're taking up. This is really great, and as I said earlier, I'm sure all our listeners appreciate this additional information. Sarah Malia, I saw your hand was up. Did you have?
No, I was clapping.
Oh,
Timothy.
thank you. You are clapping. Great. Thank you so much. So we will go on to the next reaction now from our listeners. We have Muhyiddin Mukhtar in Dadaab saying that this is great work, just appreciating our panelists. There is a question from Okello Joseph in Kakuma, who is saying that there's a lot of content produced in both Dadaab and Kakuma. How can we have the space in mainstream channels like Maisha Magic to disseminate this content? I think this has already been touched on, but if any of the panelists, especially Michael and Sarah and Timothy, can address this quite quickly, because we have a few more minutes left before we call it a day.
I'll just give my take. My take is the quality has to be worthy of Maisha Magic and those channels. And there are a lot of people that know how to determine that. And all we need is to have those contacts. And Timothy said we need collaborations from the outside to reach these artists and get them to either up the quality, or if the quality is already good enough, to network and find someone to speak that introduces you to the content finders, the people that manage content.
Thank you for that. Timothy, do you have anything to add to what Michael has shared?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, just to encourage the filmmaker that you need not to start by targeting the big pay TV stations. If at all right now you are not able to reach them, utilize the available media. The Michael and Malias spoke about digital platforms that are available. Start with that. Create room for yourself. Create a following, and the rest will just follow. Today, you can be able to still get your income without necessarily having to get to a pay TV station or mainstream. If anything, I think digital is where you need to belong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah, do you have anything else to add?
I was going to say the exact same thing that Timothy said, actually. I wouldn't focus there. You have an opportunity. Everybody, so many people are online. Use the platforms that are already there, and there are plenty. I would definitely do that. If they may pick up on it then, and they'll say, okay, let's have it. Let's have it here, and hopefully also pay you. Who knows? But yeah, I would definitely look at digital platforms first, and also film festivals. Do apply for film festivals. Make sure that you put together a good kind of festival kit. I know that FilmAid regularly gives a lesson on this, and one of their courses on this. Submit your film to lots of film festivals. There are amazing platforms like Film Freeway, where you can put your film, and I think whenever there's a film festival, you get a notification. So there are a lot of things that you can do at this point and now, but I think getting your film out there is definitely the first step. Then everything else will follow. And I think, like Eugene said, you have to market your film. Don't just make it and end there. I think it's and I did the same, to be honest. I will not lie. I made a film and I left it there. I did very little to market it. Push yourself, make that effort to get the film out there. And the choices are endless. This is a really good time for digital.
Thank you so much. Michael, I see your hand is up, so please go ahead.
I wanted to say you need to do a very good trailer. If you're doing anything good, you have to have a very good trailer. And if you have a bit of budget from Timothy, you can have your trailer You can buy time, and a few seconds before everyone else's film, yours shows fast. A few seconds before someone else's film, you can place it on YouTube, and your trailer will show before anything else, and that will get you more views. So it's a bit of spending to get. So just a thought out there for the producers.
And also just to add on that, the commission provides you free platform to market yourself. Just prepare those clips, share with us, we'll market you.
Thank you so much to Sarah, Michael, and Timothy. We have a few more minutes left, and I'm going to take the opportunity as chair to request Eugene maybe to share her insights as well and speak to this year's festival theme, which is the vision of the world that we desire. Eugene, as someone who's obviously has that film and arts background, then also as someone who is working in the humanitarian context, primarily with refugees, what is the vision that you desire? Love to hear from you as we wrap up today's session.
Thank you. No, I think the word that I want to see is the word that the looking the other side of word through the refugees' eyes. I think that's something that word is missing. And then that's when the talent of a talented refugee filmmaker has to step in. But because that if you are sitting in like in my country, like Korea, that you know nothing about refugees, because there is no refugee camp, and then we are just a small country hosting small number of refugees. So words need to know the different side of word, that they just maybe close their eyes, or they just never heard about it. That's something the film and the media take a great responsibility. That we always say that as a spokesperson, I always say that like a voice of refugee, but the voice of refugee has to be refugees. And then the public has to listen refugee stories through refugees' eyes, through their voice. And then that's the more powerful than anything else. So I think that's why the FilmAid work and then the refugee filmmakers' work is so important and crucial in this digital world, because now more than ever, it's so easy to show their talent and then their situation. And then the world need to know that the refugee are just the same people as us. They never choose to be a refugee. No one chooses to be refugees. They just throw at that situation, and then they thrive. They just not survive, they thrive. So I think that's the word that I want to see, that more and more refugees telling their story, and then world know about their story. They were father, they're a doctor, they're brother and sister. They're just like the same as us. And then that's the word that I want to see, that like the people looking to them, not with the glasses already filtered, but looking to their situation, looking to their life as it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Eugene. And I think that is a great way to end today's panel discussion. We have had a very engaging panel with lots and lots of insights shared by all our 5 panelists. We thank you for taking the time. We also thank all the participants that have shared their insights and their reactions and asked questions, because they have contributed, of course, to making this panel discussion quite engaging. For those who were not able to respond to their questions, please excuse us. We only had exactly 2 hours, and it is 1:28 in Kenya now. So please excuse us. But I'd like to encourage you to continue engaging with this year's film festival, the prequel to this year's FilmAid Festival. As I mentioned earlier, we have quite a number of films streaming live throughout the week. We also have 2 more panel discussions with quite a diverse set of speakers as well in each. So please keep engaging with us. The handle for the films, and if you'd like to tweet as well, and of course to access these webinars, please feel free to go on YouTube Live and Facebook Live as well, and search for hashtag FAFF2020. Thank you very much to all our panelists and to all our attendants. Over to you, to the technical team now, to play the promo. Thank you so much, and have a good afternoon.
positive things from refugee camp, like telling the world that this is who we are, and not everyone in a refugee camp can tell their story. So I feel great, like being a voice to the voiceless.
It's like that light in the morning when the sun rises. It shines a lot and it kind of like illuminates all of the area. So by telling one story, I'm able to shine a light on that person. That's what I love about telling a story. I kind of feel like I've brought someone from the dark and I've brought them to the light.